They thought you were just another background character in their little story. Turns out you were the author, and you just wrote them out. Oh, the shock, the absolute horror on their faces when they realized you weren't the quiet little mouse they thought you were. They spent all that time talking over you, underestimating you, treating you like a nobody, just for you to turn around and remind them exactly who runs this town. And now, they're shook, stammering, second-guessing themselves, trying to figure out when the script flipped and why their confidence suddenly packed its bags and left the building. You hit them with the reality check they never saw coming. And the best part? They can't do a damn thing about it. Before we go further, like and subscribe. The more this video spreads, the more chosen ones wake up. And when chosen ones wake up, weaklings lose their power. Now, let's get into it. They thought you were soft. They really did. Sitting there, smirking behind your back, thinking they were running the show. Well, look at them now. Nervous, confused, trying to figure out how you went from easy to ignore to the only thing they can think about. They used to laugh at you. Now, they can't even make eye contact. Because let's be real, they were never strong. Their whole identity was built on you not knowing your own power. The moment you stepped into it, game over. And the best part? You didn't even have to try. Just you standing in your truth. Just you owning your space. That was enough to break them. They're out here acting like they saw a ghost. Well, in a way, they did. They saw the ghost of their own delusions dying right in front of them. They thought they were untouchable, thought they had you in checkmate. Meanwhile, you were just waiting to flip the whole damn board over. And let's talk about how embarrassing this is for them. They really thought they could beat a chosen one. The audacity. They weren't just fighting you. They were fighting the universe itself. And guess what? The universe doesn't play fair. It plays to win. And now they're realizing it wasn't even a competition. But let's get real for a second. You almost let them win. Yeah, I'm talking to you. You sat there doubting yourself, questioning your worth, wondering if maybe, just maybe, they were right about you. Pathetic. The universe didn't put all this power inside you just for you to sit there second-guessing it like a fool. You should have known better. You should have known this was never their world. It was always yours. And now, they know it too. Because you didn't just show up, you showed out. And the ones who used to mock you, they're silent now. They're watching, whispering, trying to figure out how to crawl back into your good graces. Too late. They thought you were a mouse. You just showed them who the real boss in town is. And now, they will never recover. So, tell me, are you feeling that shift? That undeniable energy pulling you forward? Because if you're a true chosen one, you won't just watch. You'll feel this deep in your core. Drop the number 77 in the comments if you're ready to claim your power. Share your stories below. Now, let's get into it. Number 1. They played themselves, and now the game is over. They didn't just underestimate you. They bet their entire existence on the lie that you were beneath them. And now, that lie is eating them alive. They thought they were in control, thought they were the ones making the rules, holding the power, pulling the strings. They strutted around with their inflated egos, throwing their weight around like they were untouchable. They built their world on illusion, mistaking noise for strength, mistaking arrogance for power. But the problem with illusions, they shatter the moment they come into contact with reality. And you are their reality check. What they never realized was that they weren't just playing games with you. They were playing games with the system itself and the universe. It doesn't take kindly to fools who think they can rewrite destiny. They weren't just underestimating you. They were challenging the very forces that align behind the chosen. The moment they dismissed you, they unknowingly put themselves on the losing side of an unwinnable war. Because the universe does not pick its warriors lightly. It does not invest in those who are weak, nor does it waste its energy on the ordinary. It chooses only those who can carry its weight, those who can move mountains, those who can shift the tides. And the second the universe aligned with you, every step they took against you became a step toward their own downfall. And yet, despite all of this, you doubted yourself. You let their empty words, their sneers, their hollow confidence get inside your head. You sat there, questioning your worth, second-guessing the power within you. You let their illusion shake you. And that was your greatest mistake. Because if you had truly understood who you are, you never would have let the opinions of weak minds make you feel small. You should have known from the very beginning that this was never their world. It was always yours. You didn't change. They were just blind. Blind to the power that was always right in front of them. Blind to the control you always had, but never needed to flaunt. Blind to the fact that while they were busy performing their false strength, you were silently standing in your real power. And now they have no choice but to see it. They hesitate when they speak to you. They fumble over their words. Their voices shake just slightly. Their postures shift. Their confidence wavers. They aren't sure how to act around you anymore. And that alone is enough to tell you everything you need to know. Because hesitation is the first sign of fear. And they fear you now. They feel it before they can even process it. That shift in the air, that weight in your presence. It's unspoken, yet undeniable. They used to dismiss you, used to act like you weren't worth their time. Now, they can't even look you in the eyes for too long, because when they do, they see something they never saw before, something they can't explain, something that shakes them to their core. What changed? Not you, only their perception. Because in their world, power is noise. Power is whoever yells the loudest, whoever demands attention, whoever forces people to recognize them. They believe in intimidation. They believe in control through fear, through manipulation, through deception. They thought that was the only way power worked. And because you never played by those rules, they assumed you had no power at all. They mistook your silence for irrelevance. They mistook your patience for weakness. They mistook your ability to observe for a lack of presence. They wrote you off as background noise, a spectator in their self-important narratives. They told themselves you weren't a threat, that you were nothing more than a passive bystander in the world they thought they owned. And for a while, you let them. Not because you believed it, but because you knew something they didn't. You knew that real power doesn't need to perform. It doesn't need to be loud. It doesn't need to prove itself to anyone. Real power exists, whether it's acknowledged or not. And yours? Yours was waiting. And let's be honest, you let them have their fun. You let them bask in their illusion. Let them feel like they were untouchable. You watched as they played their little games, as they walked around believing they had it all figured out. You knew they were setting themselves up for failure, yet you said nothing. Because why would a king argue with fools? Why would a true leader waste time trying to convince pawns of their own power? You were never in the business of proving yourself to people who weren't even on your level to begin with. But then the shift happened. The moment they never saw coming. The moment when the universe decided it was time for you to rise. And that's when it all crumbled for them. Because they weren't just going up against you anymore. They were going up against something far bigger than they could comprehend. They were fighting against the tides, against destiny, against a force that does not lose. And now, it's too late for them to undo what's already been set in motion. Now, they look at you differently, not because you've changed, but because they finally see the truth. They see the power they ignored for so long. They see the control you always had, but never needed to force. They see the difference between real strength and the cheap imitation they've been clinging to. And the worst part for them, they can't go back to the way things were. They can't unknow what they now know. They can't undo the moment they realized they were never in control to begin with. But let's talk about you, because after everything, you need to ask yourself, will you ever doubt yourself again? Will you ever allow weak minds to convince you that you are less than what you are? Will you ever shrink yourself again just to fit into a world that was never meant to contain you? Because if you've truly learned anything, if you've truly seen the power of the universe aligning in your favor, then the answer should be clear. Never again. The ones who mocked you, underestimated you, dismissed you, they were never above you, not even for a second. They were beneath you. They were small, insignificant, temporary obstacles on a path that was always leading somewhere greater. They never had the power they thought they did. It was all an illusion, a desperate performance for a reality that was never theirs to control. And now they are nothing more than spectators watching you take your rightful place. They thought they were the ones in charge. They thought they made the rules. They thought they had the power to decide who would rise and who would fall. They thought wrong. Because in the end, this was never their story. It was always yours. Number 2. They can't explain it, but they feel it, and it's tearing them apart. The weight in the room isn't your words, your actions, or even your presence. It's the undeniable truth that they bet against the wrong one, and now they have to live with that regret. Something is different now. They can't put their finger on it, can't articulate it, but they feel it. That shift in the air, that pressure settling into their chest when you enter the room, the way their confidence suddenly feels like a cheap mask slipping off their face. It's not just that you've changed, it's that their delusions can't survive in your presence anymore. They built a world where you were nothing, where they were superior, where they held all the control. But that world is crumbling, and they have no idea how to survive in the new one. The one where you are the one who commands the space without even trying. They used to ignore you, used to act like you didn't matter, like you were just a bystander in their world. But now, they can't look away, and that eats them alive. Because every time they see you now, every time they hear your name, every time they're forced to acknowledge your presence, they are also forced to face the truth they spent so long denying. The truth that you were never beneath them. The truth that they were never in control. The truth that while they were busy running their mouths, boosting their egos, and faking their confidence, you were watching, learning, calculating, and now they don't know where they stand anymore. They hesitate. Their words don't flow as easily. The smirks they once wore so confidently feel unnatural now. They shift in their seats. They fumble over interactions that once felt effortless. They don't move the same. And the worst part? You didn't do anything. You didn't argue. You didn't try to prove yourself. You didn't beg for recognition or force them to acknowledge you. You just existed. And that alone was enough to wreck them. Because in their world, power was supposed to be loud. Power was supposed to be something they controlled, something they could measure, something that required constant performance. But you flipped that entire perception on its head, because real power doesn't need to prove itself. Real power just is. And now, they don't know what to do with that realization. Because if you were always this, if you were always meant to rise, if you were always the one holding the real strength, what does that make them? What does that say about their so-called dominance, their self-importance, their inflated egos that only existed because they mistook your silence for insignificance? It makes them frauds, and deep down, they know it. They feel the shift, and it terrifies them, because now, for the first time, they don't know the rules anymore. The same tricks that worked before, the belittling, the dismissive tones, the fake confidence, it all falls flat now. And they don't know how to adapt to this new dynamic, this new power structure where they are no longer in control. And the best part? There is nothing they can do about it. They could pretend before. They could convince themselves that you were nothing, that you weren't a threat, that they were the ones in charge. But now, that lie no longer holds any weight. And every time they see you, every time they feel that weight settle into their bones, they are reminded that they lost before they even knew they were in a competition. They don't talk to you the same. They don't look at you the same. That arrogant, effortless confidence, gone, replaced with hesitation, replaced with forced laughter, nervous glances, and shaky words that betray the fact that they are scrambling to adjust to a reality they never prepared for. And why would they? In their minds, they were never supposed to be in this position. They thought they were untouchable. And that's what makes this so satisfying. They did this to themselves. They dismissed you. They ignored you. They underestimated you. They put themselves in this position. Every moment they chose arrogance over awareness. Every time they treated you like a nobody. Every time they convinced themselves that you were beneath them, they were setting themselves up for this very moment. And now they have to live with the consequences. But let's not forget, you almost let them win. You sat there, doubting yourself, questioning your worth, wondering if maybe they were right about you. You let their delusions shake you. You almost bought into their lies. And that was a disgrace. The universe didn't choose you for no reason. You weren't placed on this path to question whether or not you belonged. You always belonged. The only difference now is that they finally have to acknowledge what was always true. Let them struggle with it. Let them squirm. Let them sit with the weight of their own arrogance, their own blindness, their own failure to see what was right in front of them. Let them wrestle with the fact that they played themselves. Because they did. And they have no one to blame but themselves. They thought you were a nobody. Now, you're the one they can't stop thinking about. And that is their worst nightmare. Number 3. They don't apologize, but their behavior says it all. They'll never say the words out loud, but their silence, their hesitation, their nervous glances, that's the apology. They won't admit they were wrong, won't say they underestimated you, won't acknowledge that everything they thought about you was a lie they told themselves to feel bigger, stronger, more in control. Their pride won't let them. Their ego won't allow it. But watch them. Watch how they move differently now. Watch how they hesitate before speaking, how their confidence isn't quite as sharp as it used to be, how their laughter doesn't come as easily when you're in the room. They feel the shift, even if they'll never put it into words. They know they don't hold the same position they once did. They know you aren't the same person they once dismissed. They won't apologize, but their behavior says it all. Before, they treated you like nothing. They ignored you, belittled you, made you feel like you were just another face in the background. They talked over you, made jokes at your expense, never gave you the respect you deserved. In their mind, you weren't someone worth acknowledging. You weren't a threat. But now they don't know how to act around you. They choose their words more carefully. They tread lightly. They check themselves before saying something they once would have said without a second thought. They aren't sure where they stand with you anymore. And that alone speaks volumes. Because people only act this way when they know they messed up, when they realize they miscalculated, when they feel something they can't quite explain, an unease, a shift, a presence they never accounted for. And that presence is you. They thought they could overlook you forever. Now, they can't go a day without acknowledging your presence. You never needed their approval. You never needed them to validate your worth. You weren't waiting for them to recognize you, to invite you in, to finally admit that you belonged. That was never the goal. Because true power doesn't seek permission. But now they don't have a choice. They can't ignore what's standing right in front of them. They can't pretend they don't see you, can't pretend you don't exist, can't pretend you aren't everything they tried to convince themselves you weren't. Because once something becomes undeniable, it demands to be seen. And that's exactly what you've become. They used to act like you didn't matter. Now, they're studying you, watching your every move, analyzing your success, keeping tabs on what you do next. They won't admit it, won't say they underestimated you, won't apologize for how they treated you, but their actions betray them. You've become something they can't escape. And that is more satisfying than any apology they could ever give. Because at the end of the day, words mean nothing. Respect is earned. And now you have all of it. Number 4, they never saw you coming. Now they can't look away. They spent so much time looking down on you, convinced they had you figured out, until one day they looked up, And there you were, towering over everything they built on a foundation of lies. You let them believe what they wanted, let them box you in, let them write their own cheap narrative about you, let them operate under the delusion that they had control. They were so sure of themselves, so convinced that you were small, predictable, safe. Someone they could shove into a corner and forget about. Someone whose presence never required a second thought. And for a while, you played along. Not because you ever believed it, but because you knew what they didn't. You knew that illusions always shatter. You knew that the moment would come when reality would punch them in the face. And when that moment arrived, you wouldn't have to lift a finger. And then it happened. The shift. The moment their perception cracked and fell apart right in front of them. You saw it in real time. The way their breath caught in their throat. The way their posture stiffened. The way they scrambled to make sense of what they were seeing. Because what they thought they knew, what they had convinced themselves, was reality, no longer fit. And that terrified them. They were so comfortable when they thought they had control, when they thought you were someone they could dismiss, someone they could talk over, someone who would never be a factor in their world. That confidence has turned into uncertainty. Now they hesitate. Now they overthink their words. Now they tread carefully where they once stomped around with no regard. And the worst part for them? You didn't have to do anything. You didn't have to shout. You didn't have to fight for their validation. You didn't have to prove a single thing. Because power like yours doesn't need to perform. It doesn't need to demand attention. It doesn't beg for recognition. It simply exists. And once it's seen, once it's felt, it cannot be ignored. They can feel it now. Every time you speak, every time you move, every time you so much as glance in their direction, the weight of it settles over them, pressing down on their fragile egos, suffocating the false reality they built for themselves. Because they can no longer pretend you don't matter, no longer pretend you are anything less than a force that overshadows every weak attempt they made to keep you boxed in. And here's what eats them alive the most. It was never about you proving yourself. The battlefield of perception was never about you needing their recognition. It was about them realizing they were wrong. About them realizing they miscalculated, that they dismissed something they never should have, that they let their arrogance blind them, and now they have to sit with the consequences of that mistake. They can't undo it. They can't go back and rewrite history, pretend they always saw your worth, act like they always knew you had it in you, because they didn't. They were too busy playing their roles, too wrapped up in their own self-importance, to notice that the power they thought they had was nothing more than an illusion. And now they can't unsee it. They can't unfeel the shift. They can't take back the moment they realized that the version of you they created in their minds never really existed. Because you were never small, you were never weak, you were never beneath them. They just weren't ready to face what you really are, and now they have no choice. Number 5, let them wonder, let them worry, let them feel it. They never saw the danger in the room because they were too busy laughing at it. Now, the laughter is gone, replaced by silence, and in that silence, their fear speaks loudest. They mistook silence for insignificance. They thought that because you weren't loud, because you weren't constantly demanding attention, you were powerless. They thought that because you didn't react, because you didn't fight for a seat at their pathetic little table, you didn't matter. They won't make that mistake again. They thought you were harmless, a quiet presence, a passive observer, someone they could toy with, dismiss, walk past without a second thought. They saw what they wanted to see: a mouse, small, insignificant, something beneath them, and you let them believe it. Not because you were weak, not because you ever doubted yourself, but because you understood something they never could. Real power doesn't need to prove itself. The deadliest predators don't roar before they strike. They don't announce their presence. They don't make a show of their strength. They wait. They watch. They let their prey grow comfortable. Let them bask in their false sense of security. Let them believe they are untouchable. And when the moment comes, they don't attack. They end it. And you waited. Every insult, every moment they ignored you, every time they dismissed you, every second they underestimated you, every false sense of superiority they clung to, you watched, you calculated, you saw how they moved, how they operated, how they mistook their arrogance for invincibility. They weren't leading, they weren't in control, they were walking straight into your hands. And now they finally see it. You can feel it, can't you? That shift, the way the air changes when you walk in, the hesitation in their voices, the way they search for words that once came so easily. They feel something, but they don't know what to call it. Uncertainty, confusion, fear. They don't know, but it's there, pressing down on them, making their skin crawl with the uncomfortable realization that they never had you figured out. Because before, they were so sure of themselves, so confident in their version of reality, where they were on top and you were beneath them. Now their reality is collapsing, and the only thing standing tall in the rubble is you. They won't admit it, of course. They never do. They'll pretend nothing's changed, act like they still hold the same confidence they once did. But watch them closely. It's in the little things, the way their eyes dart away just a little too quickly, the way they shift uncomfortably when you speak, the way their laughter sounds forced, their words a little too carefully chosen. They are scrambling, because the truth is, they don't know what to do now. How do you fight something you never even saw coming? How do you regain control when the very foundation of your power was built on the assumption that the other person didn't have any? They can't, and that's what haunts them. Let them wonder. Let them overthink every interaction. Let them question every past moment. Let them lay awake at night, replaying it all, realizing just how badly they miscalculated. Let them sit in the discomfort of their own arrogance, their own blindness, their own foolish belief that they ever had control over you. Let them feel it. Because this is what they created. Every smug glance, every condescending smirk, every dismissive tone, this is what it built toward. They dug their own grave, brick by brick, word by word, action by action. And now they have to sit in the mess they made. They thought they were running the game. Turns out, they were the ones being played. Number 6. They wanted you to doubt. Now they're the ones questioning everything. They spent all that time trying to plant doubt in your mind, only to end up drowning in their own. They worked so hard to break you. Every move they made, every word they spoke, every little jab disguised as a joke. It was all designed to make you question yourself, to make you wonder if you were good enough, if you were capable, if you even belonged. They thrived off your hesitation. They fed off your uncertainty. Because as long as you doubted yourself, they could keep their illusion intact. They needed you to feel small. They needed you to second-guess your power. Because the moment you stepped into it, the moment you truly saw yourself for what you are, everything changed. And now, they're the ones questioning everything. They don't walk with the same confidence anymore. They don't speak with the same authority. They hesitate. They overthink. They stumble through interactions that used to feel so effortless. Because in their mind, they had everything figured out. You were supposed to stay in your place. You were supposed to remain unsure, insecure, looking up to them like they were something more than they actually are. But now the roles have reversed. Now they're the ones uncertain, and it's eating them alive. You were never the problem. They were. But they worked hard to convince you otherwise. They gaslit, manipulated, twisted every situation in their favor. They wanted you to believe that if you ever felt out of place, it was because you didn't belong. That if you ever struggled, it was because you weren't strong enough. That if you ever felt resistance, it was because you weren't worthy. Lies. It was never about your worth. It was about control. Because the truth is, they always saw your potential. They always knew what you were capable of. They recognized your power long before you did. And that's why they had to keep you doubting. Because a chosen one who doesn't recognize their own strength, that's the only kind of chosen one they could handle. But now you see it, and they don't know what to do. They're scrambling, trying to adjust, trying to find a new way to keep the upper hand, but it's too late. The old tricks don't work anymore. The manipulation falls flat. The mind games have no effect, because you don't doubt yourself anymore. And that terrifies them. Watch them closely. The ones who once spoke with certainty now choose their words carefully. The ones who carried themselves with arrogance now seem a little uneasy. They shift, they hesitate, they look at you differently, not because you changed, but because they know they can't gaslight you anymore. They used to dismiss you so easily, used to talk over you, laugh at you, roll their eyes when you spoke. But now they pause. Now they watch their tone. Now they aren't sure if they still have permission to treat you the same way. Because they feel the shift. They know the energy isn't in their favor anymore. And here's what will drive them crazy. You didn't even have to do anything. You didn't beg for their approval. You didn't demand respect. You simply stopped doubting yourself. You simply decided to stand in your power, and that alone was enough to shake their entire perception of reality. Let that sink in. They wanted to break you. Instead, they broke themselves. Let them question. Let them overthink. Let them drown in the very doubt they tried to plant in you. Because now they're the ones haunted by uncertainty. Every move they make feels wrong. Every assumption they held about you no longer applies. They look at you and they don't see who they thought you were. And that will eat at them more than anything else. Because there's no going back. You don't unsee the truth. You don't undo the realization. You don't return to the illusion once it's shattered. And now they're stuck in the ruins of their own arrogance. They spent so much time trying to make you doubt yourself. Now they don't even trust themselves anymore. Number 7. They thought they broke you, but all they did was build a monster. They thought they were burying you. Turns out they were just digging their own grave. They really thought they had you figured out. Thought they could break you, shatter you, strip you of your confidence, and leave you scrambling to pick up the pieces. They threw obstacles in your way, whispered lies in your ear, betrayed you when you least expected it. They wanted you weak. They wanted you defeated. They wanted you so consumed by doubt and pain that you would never find your way back. But here's where they messed up. Every attempt to weaken you only made you stronger. Every knife they stuck in your back sharpened your mind. Every moment they thought you were crumbling, you were rebuilding yourself into something unbreakable. They weren't breaking you, they were forging you. And now they have to deal with the unstoppable force they created. They never wanted you to realize your power. That's why they attacked you. That's why they lied to you, betrayed you, tried to make you feel small. They saw your potential long before you did, and that's why they did everything in their power to crush it. Because a chosen one who doesn't know their strength is easy to control. A chosen one who doubts themselves, who second-guesses their worth, who constantly seeks approval, that's someone they can manipulate. But you woke up. You started to see through their tricks. You stopped waiting for validation. You stopped explaining yourself, stopped apologizing for existing, stopped questioning whether you were enough. And that's when they lost control. Because the truth is, they were never powerful. They only had power over you when you didn't know who you were. Now, they're looking at you, and they don't even recognize the person standing in front of them, because you are not the same. You are colder, smarter, stronger, more dangerous, and they feel it. Watch them panic. Watch them scramble to adjust, trying to figure out how to deal with this version of you, the one they never expected, the one they can't control, the one they thought they had destroyed. They used to walk all over you without a second thought, used to dismiss your feelings, your words, your existence like you were nothing. Now they tread carefully, because suddenly they aren't so sure anymore. Suddenly they hesitate before speaking. Suddenly they feel the weight of every action they took against you, because the reality is sinking in. They didn't break you. They built something they will never be able to handle. And that terrifies them. But let's talk about you. You almost let them win. You almost let them convince you that you were weak. You almost let them make you believe their lies. Almost let them break your spirit. Almost gave up on yourself because of what they did to you. But you didn't. You took every ounce of pain and turned it into something lethal. Every betrayal became a lesson. Every failure became a stepping stone. Every wound became armor. You learned. You adapted. And now you are something else entirely. Something they never prepared for. Something that no one, not them, not the world, not even you, saw coming. And that is your greatest victory. So let them deal with it. Let them sit with the consequences of their actions. Let them watch as the very person they tried to destroy becomes the force they can't escape. Because you are no longer just a survivor. You are a monster of their own making. And now they have to live with it. Number 8. The throne was never theirs. It was just on loan. They sat on a throne made of illusions until reality ripped it from under them. They walked like rulers, talked like kings and queens, acted like their power was absolute. They sat at the top, looking down on you, believing they were untouchable. But the thing about borrowed power, it always has an expiration date. They never truly owned the throne they sat on. They never had the strength to keep it. Because real power isn't about who talks the loudest, who demands the most attention, who forces their will onto others. Real power is unshakable. Real power is undeniable. And real power is earned. And now the real ruler has arrived. They thought they had secured their place, thought they had cemented their legacy, thought they could reign forever, unchallenged, unquestioned, untouchable. But deep down, they always knew the throne wasn't truly theirs. That's why they had to rely on deception, manipulation, and control to hold on to it. Because when someone actually belongs at the top, they don't have to fight to stay there. They sensed the shift before they even understood it. They felt the energy change. The foundation beneath them cracked before they could react. And then they looked up and saw you standing there. They tried to dismiss it at first, tried to convince themselves that nothing was different, that you were still beneath them, still someone they didn't have to worry about. But the problem? Reality doesn't care about their delusions. And the reality is that they were never meant to rule. And you were. Watch them struggle to accept it. Watch them try to reclaim the authority they thought was theirs. Watch them fail, because they can't fake their way back to power anymore. They can't talk over you, control the narrative, manipulate the situation to work in their favor. That time is over. The energy has shifted, and they feel it. They feel the weight of the throne slipping from their grasp. They feel the respect that once came easily start to waver. They feel the doubt creeping in, the same doubt they tried to instill in you. Because now, people see the difference. They see the difference between someone who was given power and someone who embodies it, between someone who played the part and someone who is the part, between someone who wore the crown and someone who was born with it in their blood. And no amount of lies, manipulation, or arrogance can cover that up anymore. And let's talk about you. Because there was a time when you actually believed them, when you looked at them and thought they had something you didn't, when you thought they had some special quality that made them worthy of the power they held. But now you see the truth. They weren't stronger, they weren't smarter, they weren't more capable. They were just there first. That's it. They took up space because no one challenged them. They reigned because no one had arrived yet to show them what true power looks like. But now, you're here, and there is nothing they can do to stop what's coming. So let them scramble. Let them try to hold on to their crumbling empire. Let them watch as the world shifts around them, as their so-called power fades into irrelevance. Because the throne was never truly theirs. It was just on loan. And now, it's time for the real ruler to take their place. Number 9. The Silent War and Why You've Already Won. The loudest ones in the room are always the weakest. Real power doesn't announce itself. It just wins. They thought power was about being the most visible, about being the loudest voice, the biggest presence, the one who takes up the most space. They built their identity around control, around forcing people to listen, around creating the illusion that they were untouchable. And for a while, it worked. People bought into the show. They mistook arrogance for strength. They mistook dominance for leadership. They mistook noise for power. But real power doesn't need an audience. Real power doesn't need validation, doesn't need to be seen, doesn't need to be constantly performed. Real power moves in silence. And while they were busy making noise, making themselves look important, you were watching, you were studying, you were preparing. And now it's over. Before they even realized there was a battle to begin with. They never saw the battlefield. That's what makes this so satisfying. They thought they were in control, thought they were untouchable, thought they had the game figured out. But what they didn't realize was that the game was never being played in front of them. It was being played in the shadows, behind the scenes, in the spaces they didn't even know existed. They thought the war was fought in arguments, in displays of dominance, in public victories. But that's not where true power operates. The real war was happening in the places they weren't looking. It was happening when they dismissed you, when they underestimated you, when they wrote you off as someone who would never be a threat. And while they were busy performing power, you were becoming it. And now, look at them. The ones who were so loud, so sure of themselves, so convinced that they were untouchable. They're silent now. Because that's the thing about real power. It doesn't need to be aggressive. It doesn't need to be forceful. It just exists. And once it makes itself known, the illusion collapses. They can feel it, even if they don't understand it. The way the energy shifts when you walk into the room, the way their confidence wavers, the way they second-guess themselves in conversations that used to feel effortless. They don't know what changed. They just know that suddenly they don't feel as powerful as they used to. And the truth? Nothing changed. The only difference now is that they finally see what was always there. They thought the war would be a battle of words, of reputation, of control. But the war was never about that. The war was about who could endure, who could outlast, who could rise without ever needing to announce it. And that was you. You never had to prove yourself to them. You never had to fight for their approval. You just became undeniable. And once something is undeniable, it can't be ignored. That's why you've already won. Because this was never about who was the loudest. It was never about who had the most influence, the most visibility, the most control over the narrative. It was about who was built for the long game. And you were built for this. So let them sit with it. Let them struggle with the weight of their own insignificance. Let them realize, slowly and painfully, that all the noise in the world could never make up for what they lack. Because the truth is, You never even had to fight them. You just had to outlast them. And now, all that's left is their silence. Because this wasn't a war of words. This was a war of presence. And you've already won. Number 10. The ones who laughed first won't be laughing last. They turned you into a joke. Now, they're the ones living in the punchline, because the biggest joke of all, they thought they were untouchable. They laughed at you, they mocked you, whispered behind your back, smirked in your face, made you feel like you were some kind of joke. They thought it was funny to watch you struggle, funny to see you underestimated, funny to make you feel like you didn't belong. You were their entertainment, their go-to target, the one they used to boost their own fragile egos. But what they didn't realize, the real joke was on them. Because the people who laugh the hardest at someone else's downfall are always the most fragile when it's their turn to fall. And now it's their turn. They thought you were harmless. That's why they felt so comfortable laughing at you. That's why they thought they could get away with it. They assumed you would always stay down, that you would never fight back, that you would always just take it. They thought they were invincible. They were dead wrong. Because while they were busy laughing, you were busy working. You were growing, evolving, sharpening your mind, leveling up in ways they never saw coming. You were turning every insult, every moment of humiliation, every betrayal into fuel. You were becoming something they would never be able to handle. And now, they aren't laughing anymore. Look at them now. The same people who smirked when you struggled are scrambling. The same people who mocked you in front of others now avoid eye contact when you walk in. The ones who dismissed you like you were nothing are suddenly very aware of your presence. Because here's the thing, they never expected you to rise, never expected you to outgrow them, to surpass them, to become something bigger than they ever could. They thought they had forever to feel superior. And now, they don't even know where they stand. They see the shift, they feel the change, and deep down, they know they messed up. And the best part, you didn't even have to get revenge. You didn't have to clap back, didn't have to argue, didn't have to prove them wrong in some dramatic way. You just outgrew them. And that's the most painful thing of all for them. Because the truth is, they never really hated you. They envied you. That's why they needed to tear you down, why they needed to keep you doubting yourself, why they had to make a joke out of you. Because deep down, they saw something in you that scared them. They saw potential. They saw greatness. And now, they see what happens when you stop holding yourself back. Let them sit in their regret. Let them replay every joke, every smirk, every time they try to make you feel less than you are. Let them realize, too late, that they were never better than you, that they were never ahead of you, that the power they thought they had was just an illusion. They made you the punchline. Now, you're the whole damn show. And the ones who laughed first won't be laughing last. Number 11. When did they realize they were wrong about you? The moment they realized the person they overlooked was the one who had the power all along, that was the moment they lost. There was a moment, A shift, a split second where everything they thought they knew about you shattered. Maybe it was when you spoke up and they weren't expecting it. Maybe it was when you walked away without looking back. Maybe it was when they saw you succeed in a way they never thought possible. Whatever it was too late for them. Because up until that moment, they had convinced themselves that you were nothing, that you were just another forgettable presence, another voice they could dismiss, another person who would never challenge them. They were comfortable in their delusion. They thought they had you all figured out. Then reality hit, and the silence they mistook for weakness, for passivity, for irrelevance. That silence turned into something they never anticipated: power. Because real power doesn't need to announce itself. Real power doesn't beg for recognition. It waits, it watches, it moves when the time is right. And that time, it came. And when it did, they felt it. So tell me, when was your moment? When did they realize they were wrong about you? Drop your revelation in the comments. Let them know the silence was never weakness. It was power waiting to be revealed.